I gave 8 years of my life to the R&D department. Every line of code in the core patents, every algorithm, was forged in the sleepless nights I endured. At the victory gala, the chairman raised a champagne flute and announced to the entire company, "The success of this patent is entirely due to the technical brilliance of my future nephew-in-law." The nephew-in-law stood up, basking in the applause with a winning smile. Meanwhile, I sat in the corner, invisible. I didn't say a word. I simply opened my laptop. I moved the cursor to a hidden folder, double-clicked, and entered my password. Initiate Protocol B. I clicked Confirm. The countdown began. In 60 seconds, all core data would be permanently incinerated. I sat in the shadows. The crystal chandeliers overhead were blindingly bright. On the stage, Chairman Richard Vance held his glass high, his face flushed with triumph. The success of the Aegis system is a monumental achievement for R&D. But I must especially thank one person, my brilliant future nephew-in-law, Brad Sterling. The feedback from the microphone whined. All eyes and applause surged in one direction. Brad stood up, looking sharp in a bespoke suit, his smile perfectly rehearsed. He wrapped an arm around the waist of the woman beside him. She stood up too, smiling at the crowd. That woman was Jessica Vance, my ex-girlfriend. Brad was her current fiancé. Richard Vance was her uncle. Every line of code in the Aegis system was the crystallization of my youth. Over 300 late nights, over 1,000 patches, the final algorithmic model, it was all carved into my brain. Brad had parachuted into the department 3 months ago as the vice director. His daily job consisted of bringing me coffee, asking if I was tired, and then changing the name on my daily progress reports to his own before sending them to Richard. Now, he was the core hero of the technical breakthrough. I was just a ghost in the corner. Jessica's gaze drifted over the crowd and landed on me. There was no guilt, only a trace of showing off and pity. As if to say, look, this is the future you couldn't keep and the future you can't reach. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I felt a wave of nausea, unsure if it was the cheap alcohol or something else. I pulled my laptop from under the table and booted it up. The screen glowed, reflecting my expressionless face. The desktop was clean, just a recycling bin. I moved the mouse to an invisible pixel and clicked 3 times in a specific sequence. A dialog box popped up. Enter password. I typed in a 32-character string. A new folder appeared named Protocol B. I double-clicked. Inside was a single program, a red rocket icon. I hovered the mouse over it. Richard was still talking on stage. Brad not only has the skills, but the leadership. Let's have him say a few words. The applause erupted again. Brad cleared his throat and took the mic. Thanks, Uncle Richard. Thank you, everyone. Regarding the core philosophy of Aegis, it's actually quite simple. I stopped listening. I clicked the red rocket icon. Another confirmation box popped up. Protocol B is the final executive program. It is irreversible and untraceable. Once initiated, all Aegis system data deployed on servers across 18 countries will undergo logical destruction and physical sector overriding within 60 seconds. All backups will simultaneously fail. Confirm initiation. My finger rested on the trackpad. Confirm. A bright red countdown appeared on the screen. 60, 59, 58. I closed the laptop, stood up, and walked toward the banquet hall doors. No one noticed me. Everyone was immersed in praising the hero and dreaming of the future. I pushed the doors open. The wind in the corridor was cold, hitting my face. It felt good. I pulled out my phone and checked the time. The countdown was over. My phone began to vibrate violently. It was Dave Miller, the R&D director. I didn't answer. I turned the phone off completely. The world went silent. I returned to my rented apartment. It wasn't big, a 1-bedroom unit. This was where I wrote the first line of code for Aegis. 8 years. I went from a fresh-faced graduate to the company's core programmer. I thought skill was everything. Turns out, skill is worthless in the face of nepotism. I took off my suit jacket and threw it on the sofa. I walked into the bathroom and turned on the shower. The cold water poured down over my head, making me shiver. But my mind was exceptionally clear. Protocol B wasn't an impulse. I started preparing it from the first day Brad parachuted into the department. I knew Richard Vance. He only saw profit, not right or wrong. Brad was his nephew-in-law, a pawn to consolidate the family business. I was just a tool that could be sacrificed at any time. The design of Protocol B was precise. It wasn't a simple deletion script. It was a distributed data cancer. Once the command was sent, dormant microprograms and servers around the world would activate simultaneously. They would start from the lowest level of the physical hard drive drivers, performing meaningless, high-intensity, random overwrites. This overwriting would simulate bad sectors and firmware corruption. At the same time, it would attack all known backup systems, including cold storage tape libraries. It exploited a zero-day vulnerability in the backup software itself, a vulnerability only I knew about. It made the backup system believe the data was intact, but in reality, everything restored would be garbage code. The most critical step, it would destroy all traces of its own operation. Logs, caches, memory records, everything would be wiped. From the outside, it would look like a global, inexplicable, catastrophic hardware failure. No one could prove it was man-made. And certainly, no one could link it to me. I turned off the shower and dried off. Protocol B had a backdoor only I could open. I was the true god of Aegis. I could destroy it, and naturally, I could resurrect it. But the price of resurrection was something Richard Vance couldn't afford. I walked out of the bathroom, wearing only a towel. The phone I had tossed on the sofa lit up on its own. It had turned on automatically due to low battery settings. The moment it booted, countless calls and messages flooded in, nearly crashing the device. On the screen, Jessica's profile picture was jumping frantically. "Ethan, where are you? Did you do something? Answer the phone. Are you crazy? Do you know how important tonight is for Brad? You are ruining him. You are ruining yourself." I looked at the exclamation marks. I found it slightly amusing. Ruining him? From the moment he put his name on my life's work, he was already ruined. I didn't reply. I opened another chat. It was Dave Miller, the R&D director. "Ethan, it's a disaster. All servers are down. Europe, North America, Southeast Asia. Everything is in the red. Look at this. We can't access the backend. It's a hardware-level error. The ops team is losing their minds. We can't find the cause. Did you leave a backdoor? Say something." I could imagine Dave's frantic face on the other end. He was a good man, but too cowardly. When Brad stole the credit, Dave saw it, but only dared to pat my shoulder in private and say, "Tough break." Tough break is the cheapest form of comfort. I deleted the chat with Dave. Then, I opened the chat with Jessica and typed a single line. "Congratulations to you both. Send." Then block, delete. The whole process took less than 5 seconds. After doing all this, I took a beer from the fridge and popped the tab. The foam rose, carrying the scent of malt. I walked to the window. Downstairs, a black Mercedes S-Class drove up like a maniac and screeched to a halt at the building entrance. The door flew open, and Brad stumbled out. He looked up, staring death daggers at my floor. I couldn't see his expression clearly, but I could feel his despair. I raised the beer can toward the window and tapped it against the glass. "Cheers to my 8 dead years." Brad didn't come up. He probably didn't have the key fob for the building. He stood downstairs for a long time, making frantic phone calls. I closed the curtains, ignoring him. I turned on the TV and put on a random movie. I switched my phone to airplane mode. I knew that their inability to find me would only drive them crazier. That was exactly the effect I wanted. The movie was boring. I couldn't focus on it. My mind was replaying the execution details of Protocol B and the subsequent response plan. Phase 1, chaos. The Aegis system was the company's lifeline, serving hundreds of major clients. A global service interruption meant astronomical losses every second. Breach of contract penalties, client churn, stock plummeting. Richard Vance would receive more bad news tonight than in his entire life. They would try every technical means to recover. They'd hire the world's best data recovery firms. The conclusion would be singular, unrecoverable. This phase would last about 24 hours. They would go from disbelief to panic, then to despair. Phase 2, suspicion. When all technical means failed, they would inevitably suspect the human factor. I was the father of Aegis, and the only one capable of causing this level of destruction. My silence, my disappearance, these were the best corroborating evidence. They would start looking for me, using every method available. Threats, bribery, perhaps even some underhanded tactics. Phase 3, negotiation. When they confirmed that only I could solve the problem, Richard would drop his chairman airs and actively seek to negotiate. That's when the real show would begin. I leaned back on the sofa and finished the beer. Hi, 00 a.m. Violent pounding erupted at the door. "Ethan Cole, open up. I know you're in there." It was Jessica's voice, mixed with sobbing and rage. "Open the door. Explain yourself." I didn't move. The soundproofing in this old complex was terrible. Her voice sounded particularly shrill in the silent night. "Why did you do this? Just for a name? Are you that petty? Do you know how important this credit is to Brad? Do you know how many roads my family paid for him to get this position? You ruined everything. You selfish maniac." I listened in the dark. My heart was calm. So, in her eyes, my 8 years of blood and sweat were just a name. So, her family had paved so many roads for Brad. Good. She helped erase my last shred of doubt. The knocking stopped. Then came the sound of kicking. Ethan, open the damn door. A man's voice, Brad. His voice was no longer polished. It was filled with exasperation. Get the hell out here. You loser. Do you dare to do it but not admit it? Believe it or not, I'll have someone kill you. I stood up from the sofa and walked to the door. Through the peephole, I saw Brad's bloodshot eyes and twisted face. Jessica was pulling at him, weeping. A perfect couple. How pathetic. I didn't open the door, nor did I make a sound. I took out a backup phone with a fresh SIM card and dialed a number. Hello, 911. I need to report an emergency. I live at address. Someone is violently kicking my door and making death threats. Yes, I am in danger. Please hurry. I hung up. I waited quietly. The cursing and kicking continued outside. The angrier and more out of control they became, the better it was for me. I wanted everyone to see what these polished, glamorous people looked like when their masks were torn off. About 10 minutes later, sirens wailed downstairs. Getting closer, the noise outside the door stopped abruptly. The sirens pierced the tranquility of the old complex. I heard panicked footsteps in the hallway. The neighbors had been disturbed. Brad's cursing and kicking vanished instantly. I could imagine the blood draining from his face. What's happening? Why are the police here? Jessica's voice was filled with panic. How should I know? Let's go. Brad lowered his voice, but couldn't hide the fear in it. Too late. Heavy footsteps had reached the door. Police, open up. An authoritative voice boomed. People in the hallway, hands on your heads, face the wall. I heard a short scream from Jessica. Perfect timing. I walked over slowly and opened the door. Two uniformed officers were staring sternly at the ashen-faced Brad and Jessica. Brad stood with one hand frozen in midair, as if still kicking the door. A few neighbors were peeking out. Around my lock, wood chips were scattered, and there was a clear shoe print on the door panel. Officers, it's them. I spoke, my voice not loud but clear enough. I made myself look like a terrified, ordinary citizen. They've been kicking my door and said they would find someone to kill me. I pointed to the shoe print. Irrefutable evidence. The lead officer looked at the door, then at Brad and Jessica, his frown deepening. Did you call it in? I did. I nodded. Come with us to the station, the officer said to the couple, his tone leaving no room for argument. Officer, this is a misunderstanding. Jessica tried to explain. He's my friend. We were just joking with him. Her voice faltered on the word friend. Kicking someone's door at 3 a.m. and making death threats is a joke. The officer scoffed. That's an expensive sense of humor. Brad's face alternated between red and white. Tonight, he had enjoyed the highlight of his life in a high-end ballroom. A few hours later, he was being looked at like a street thug in a dilapidated hallway. The massive drop made him lose control. Do you know who I am? My uncle is. I don't care who you are. The officer cut him off rudely. Right now, immediately, you're coming with us. The other younger officer had already pulled out handcuffs. Seeing the cuffs, Brad panicked completely. He had just become the company hero today. If news got out tomorrow that he was taken away by police, his future was toast. Don't. Officer, I'll go with you. He went soft instantly, looking pleadingly at the cop. Can you not use those? The officer ignored him. The cold handcuffs clicked onto Brad's wrists. Jessica's face went completely white. She looked at me, her eyes no longer holding pity or arrogance, but venom and fear. I didn't look at her. I simply said calmly to the officer, Sir, I need to make a detailed statement, and I request that charges be filed for violent threats and disturbing the peace. Here's my ID. Also, I feel very unsafe. I reserve the right to pursue all legal responsibilities against them. My words made Brad sway. He knew I wasn't joking. I was going to make sure he had a criminal record. A tech hero with a record? Richard Vance's company couldn't afford that embarrassment. The police led the soulless Brad and Jessica downstairs. The hallway returned to silence. I closed the door and locked the battered deadbolt. I walked to the window and watched the police cruiser's lights flashing as it disappeared into the night. I knew this was just the appetizer. The main course was yet to come. Richard Vance, its return. It was dawn by the time I finished my statement and left the police station. Brad and Jessica were charged with disturbing the peace and detained for 24 hours. For them, those 24 hours would be worse than death. For me, I had won a precious 24-hour window. I didn't go back to the exposed apartment. While at the station, I used my backup phone to call a rideshare to the other side of the city, to a short-term service apartment I had rented long ago. All my important items, including a brand-new, unopened laptop, several SIM cards with different identities, and a multi-encrypted hard drive containing the original clean code of Aegis, were already here. This was the true vault of Protocol B. Destroying Aegis was just the first step. How to gain the maximum benefit from this destruction was my ultimate goal. Walking into the new apartment, I drew the curtains, dimming the room. I took off my jacket and showered first. The warm water washed away the fatigue. When I changed into clean clothes and sat in front of the new computer, I felt like a hunter reborn, calm and patient. I connected to the hotel Wi-Fi and opened a financial news site. Sure enough, news about my former employer, Vance Corp, was blowing up. Vance Corp core system Aegis global service outage, cause unknown. Rumors of catastrophic tech failure at Vance Corp. Pre-market stock plunges 30%. Hundreds of client operations halted. Massive lawsuits looming. The comments section was exploding. Some were gloating, some analyzing, and insiders were leaking that at the victory party last night, the real technical core was sidelined while a nepotism hire stole the credit. In the internet age, there are no secrets. I was reading with relish when my backup phone vibrated. A text message from an unknown number. Ethan, it's Richard Vance. Where are you? Simple content. No threats, no anger. Just a cold question. But I could feel the suppressed volcano behind the text. Richard, that old fox, finally couldn't sit still. He didn't rage like Brad. He chose the most direct approach. This meant his tech team and the expensive external consultants he hired had declared total failure over the last few hours. He confirmed it. I was the only solution. I didn't reply. A hunter never reveals his position easily. I put down the phone and began my next move. I connected an encrypted drive to the computer. Inside was the core of Protocol B, the antidote program for the data cancer, and another gift. That gift was a record I had quietly kept over 8 years of all the company's gray operations, financial fraud, bid rigging, and evidence of how Richard used shell companies to transfer assets. I thought I would never use these. Now, they were the final straw to break the camel's back. I decrypted a file concerning a minor financial irregularity and anonymously emailed it to several prominent financial journalists. Then, I swapped in a new SIM card and sent a text to Richard's private number. Just one sentence. If you want to talk, follow my rules. After sending the message, I disabled that SIM card. Like throwing a pebble into a calm lake, I just had to wait for the ripples to spread. Richard was a smart man. He would understand. The old contact methods were void. I held the initiative. If he wanted to find me, he had to abandon his high and mighty chairman attitude. I paced the room, thinking through the next steps. Richard's first reaction would likely be to use all his connections and resources to do a full-scale manhunt. He'd check my bank records, transit history, call logs, maybe even send people to my hometown in Ohio to find my parents. I anticipated this. I had withdrawn cash beforehand and closed my usual bank accounts. I rented this apartment using a fake identity I prepared. I had wiped my traces in this city like a spy. As for my parents, I had called them ahead of time, telling them the company sent me abroad for a 6-month closed project with no outside contact. They wouldn't worry. Richard's card was useless against me. Only when he exhausted all conventional and unconventional means and still couldn't find me would he feel true fear. The fear of losing control. At noon, I ordered takeout. While eating, my other phone rang. It was an unknown, encrypted temporary number I'd never seen. I knew it was Richard. He had compromised. He was playing by my rules. I picked up, saying nothing. There was a long silence on the other end, just heavy breathing. Ethan. Richard's voice sounded 10 years older, full of exhaustion and grit. It's me, I answered calmly. Where are you? Where I am doesn't matter. What matters is if Aegis can come back. I cut straight to the chase. Another silence. You did this. It was a statement, not a question. When Brad stole 8 years of my blood and sweat, you should have expected today. What do you want? Richard's voice carried a chill. Money? A promotion? Or do you just want to watch me die? What I want, you can't afford. I smiled. But we can make a deal. What deal? Simple. First, publicly apologize to me. Admit that the Aegis system was my independent creation. Second, spit out the company assets you embezzled, and personally cover all losses from this event. Third, I paused, enunciating every word. I want 70% of the shares of Vance Corp currently under your name. The breathing on the other end instantly grew heavier. You're insane. Richard's voice spiked, filled with incredulous rage. This is robbery. You robbed me first, Mr. Vance. I'm just taking back what's mine and charging a little interest. In your dreams. You'll agree, I said lightly, because you have no choice. The stock is still falling. Client termination letters should be piling up on your desk, right? Oh, forgot to tell you. That little gift I just sent to the financial reporters was just an appetizer. I have more. Much more exciting stuff about those offshore accounts and her messy relationship with certain people in the tax department. With every sentence, the breathing on the other line quickened. When I finished, it was dead silent. Richard was completely stunned by my leverage. I'll give you 24 hours to think about it. I didn't give him room to breathe. By noon tomorrow, I want to see your sincerity. Remember, don't try to find me, and don't play tricks. My patience is limited. I hung up immediately. I walked to the window and pulled back a corner of the curtain. The city below was bustling, the sunlight blinding. A new game had begun, and this time I was the dealer. I guess at the moment he hung up, Richard probably flipped his expensive rosewood desk. He would rage, he would roar, he would use every vicious word he could think of on me. But that was just phase one. After calming down, he would act immediately. He would mobilize his network cultivated over decades, casting a net over the city to fish me out. Friends in the police would check my ID, lodging, and transit records. Contacts at the telecom carriers would try to triangulate my signal. He might even hire flexible private investigators to stake out places I might appear. Meanwhile, the company conference room must be packed. The tech team working overnight, helpless against a pile of corrupted servers. PR scrambling to handle the blizzard of media inquiries and client complaints. Legal calculating the terrifying penalties and class action lawsuits if the worst happened. Every minute, Vance Corp was bleeding. Every tick of the stock price was a needle in Richard's heart. I leisurely finished my takeout and cleaned up. Then, I opened a new laptop and logged into an anonymous dark web marketplace. I posted a new listing. Item name, complete architecture blueprints and source code for Aegis system. Description, unique, complete, clean, ready for immediate deployment. Starting bid, $50 million. Payment, anonymous cryptocurrency. I left no contact info, just enabled anonymous bidding. I knew Vance Corp's competitors were watching this storm closely. Some are probably ready to loot the burning house. This post was a bloody chunk of meat thrown into a shark tank. It would draw every lurking megalodon from the deep. If Richard wanted to keep his company, he had to agree to my terms before I sold Aegis to his enemies. This was an open conspiracy. I was telling him clearly his time was running out. Done with that, I closed the laptop, drew the curtains, and lay on the bed to sleep. I needed a rest, because I knew when Richard realized he couldn't find me, he would start using disgusting bottom-feeder tactics. Sure enough, at dusk, I was woken by a frantic ringtone. It was my old phone. I had intentionally left it on the nightstand when I fled the rental. I guess they would bombard my old number if they couldn't find me. Through a remote desktop app, I viewed that phone screen on my laptop. Hundreds of missed calls. From Jessica, from Dave Miller, from everyone at the company. The latest text was from a strange number. I opened it. Ethan, it's Jessica. My uncle bailed Brad out. Please stop hiding. Can we just talk? I'm begging you, for the sake of what we used to have. I looked at the words, what we used to have. Irony. Our relationship hit zero the moment she chose to stand by Brad and enjoy glory that wasn't hers. I ignored it. Immediately, another text came in. I know you hate me and hate Brad, but the company is innocent. There are hundreds of colleagues who need to feed their families. If you destroy the company, you destroy hundreds of homes. Do you have the heart to do that? Moral kidnapping. A familiar recipe. A familiar task. When she broke up with me, she used the same rhetoric. Ethan, my parents wanted to have a better life. What's wrong with that? Do you have the heart to see me suffer with you? She always stood on the moral high ground to accuse others of selfishness. I sneered and remotely composed a text. Simple content. Your tears are as cheap as your loyalty. Send. Then, I remotely initiated the old phone's self-destruct sequence. A high-voltage surge would instantly fry the motherboard and chip. From now on, that number and the past it carried would vanish from the world. Dealing with Jessica's harassment brought quiet back to the room. But I knew this was just the start. If Richard couldn't play this card, he'd swap to another. Brad was bailed out, but the criminal record stuck. The so-called tech hero would forever have a stain. Richard must hate me to the bone, but the more he hated, the less he dared to act rashly. He couldn't afford to lose. I turned on the TV to a financial channel. On the evening news, a famous analyst was dissecting the Vance Corp incident. According to our sources, Vance Corp's system crash isn't a simple glitch. The damage is catastrophic and recovery is nearly impossible. This means their core product, Aegis, is effectively dead. Tomorrow at opening, the stock will likely face consecutive limit downs, possibly delisting. The analyst's conclusion sentenced the teetering Vance Corp to death. Richard must have seen it. He was drowning, and I was the only driftwood. He had no choice. 10. 2:00 p.m. My encrypted phone rang again. Richard Vance. This time, no anger, just bone-deep exhaustion. I can't agree to all your conditions. He went straight to the point. 70% shares means I leave with nothing. That's no different than killing me. You can choose to disagree, I said coolly, and watch your empire crumble, picked clean by your rivals. Oh, and about your offshore accounts, I imagine the DOJ and SEC would be very interested. Heavy panting on the line. Every word I said stabbed his weak points. Ethan, leave a bridge so we can cross it later. His voice held a note of begging. You came for Vance Corp. Do you really want to see it die? Did you think about leaving me a bridge when you stole my life's work? I countered. Mr. Vance, I hold the cards. My conditions won't change. What you need to do isn't bargain, but show sincerity. What sincerity? Simple. By 9 a.m. tomorrow, I want to see your public apology letter on the front page of every major media outlet. Apologize to me, Ethan Cole. Admit Aegis was my independent creation, and admit your shameless theft. If I don't see it, we have nothing to talk about. Richard was speechless with rage. This was worse than death. For a business tycoon to publicly admit scandal and apologize to a fired employee was a total trampling of his dignity. You have one chance. I hung up again, removed the SIM card, snapped in half, and flushed it down the toilet. I cut off all ways for him to contact me. Now it was up to him. Dignity or survival. I knew he'd choose the latter. I woke up early the next day. I pulled the curtains. Sunlight flooded the room. I made coffee and opened the laptop to check the news portals. 8:50 a.m. Nothing. I wasn't anxious. People like Richard wouldn't bow until the final second. 8:59 a.m. Still quiet. Just as the second hand hit the last tick, I refreshed the page. A bold red headline instantly seized the top spot on every site. Vance Corp Chairman Richard Vance issues public apology. I clicked it. Black text on white, using the company's highest official letterhead. Richard's signature and the corporate seal were clearly stamped at the bottom. The content followed my demands almost exactly. He admitted Aegis was independently developed by Ethan Cole over 8 years, admitted management's failure in attribution, and wrongly crediting Brad Sterling. His tone was earnest, his posture low, expressing deepest regret and begging for forgiveness, hoping I would let go of past grievances and return to lead the technical work for the greater good. Of course, the letter didn't mention shares or assets. This was just his sincerity, but it was enough. The moment it went live, public opinion flipped. Sympathy for me and vitriol for Brad and Richard peaked. Brad was ruined, a national joke. Richard and Vance Corp used self-mutilation to staunch the bleeding. They pushed all blame onto Brad, the nepotism hire, trying to frame themselves as victims willing to correct mistakes. Old Fox, even in this desperate corner, he was calculating, trying to salvage the situation with an apology and kick the ball back to me. He wanted to use public opinion to kidnap me into considering the big picture. Too bad he miscalculated. I never planned to consider the big picture. I wanted the whole table. Just then, my last SIM card rang. A strange local number. I answered. Hello, is this Mr. Ethan Cole? A cautious voice. It is. Hi, I'm Chairman Vance's secretary. Mr. Vance has published the apology as requested. He wants to meet you two. Discuss the follow-up details in person. Time, location. My voice was flat. 3 p.m. today at the Serenity Private Club, the Sky Room. Mr. Vance will be waiting alone. Understood. I hung up. Serenity Club. I knew it. Good security, high privacy. Richard thought of everything. He thought this was the start of a negotiation. He was wrong. This wasn't a negotiation. It was a sentencing. 2:30 p.m. I took a cab near the club. I didn't go in. I sat in a cafe across the street, ordered an iced Americano, and watched the entrance. I was scanning for suspicious people or vehicles. Though Richard promised to come alone, I wouldn't naively trust an old fox. Before leaving, I set up a final insurance policy. I uploaded the encrypted file with all of Richard's dirt to a cloud server and set a timed email. Recipients: major media outlets and the public tip line of the Department of Justice. The email would send automatically at 6:00 p.m. The only way to cancel was for me to log in and manually stop it before 5:50 p.m. If anything happened to me, Richard would meet his doom tonight. 2:50 p.m. A black Maybach pulled up. Richard's car. The driver opened the door. Richard stepped out. No suit today. He wore a casual jacket, looking less like a besieged chairman and more like a retiree going for tea. He walked in alone. The driver parked far away and smoked, not approaching. I watched for 10 more minutes. Everything was normal. It seemed Richard wasn't playing tricks. Or He felt he didn't need help in a psychological war. I finished my coffee, adjusted my collar, and walked across the street. The greeter bowed. Mr. Ethan Cole. Yes. Mr. Vance is waiting in the sky room. Follow me. I followed her through the winding corridors. She stopped at a heavy wooden door, opened it, gestured please, and retreated, closing the door softly. Inside, sandalwood smoke curled in the air. Richard sat behind a tea table, skillfully brewing tea. He looked up, forcing a smile. You're here. Seat. His tone was like welcoming a long-lost nephew. I didn't sit. I stood a few steps away, watching him coldly. The room was quiet, save for the water pouring into the pot. Richard didn't seem to mind my rudeness. He finished the ritual and pushed a cup of clear tea toward the seat opposite him. Try this. Vintik da Hongbo. Hard to get. He sipped his own cup, eyes closed, looking intoxicated, as if he really just came for tea. I finally spoke, voice like ice. My time is expensive. I'm not here to watch you perform. Richard opened his eyes, looking at me with a complex mix of appreciation and regret. Ethan, I always admired you. Your skill, focus, calm, far beyond your age. I always meant to groom you as the future tech leader. So your method of grooming was to slap your incompetent nephew-in-law's name on my work. I mocked. Richard's face stiffened. Then he sighed. That was my mistake. I'm getting old. Brad is my sister's only son. He's useless, but as an uncle, I wanted to give him a leg up. I admit, I used the stupidest way and hurt you. So I apologize. He stood up and bowed deeply to me. A billionaire chairman bowing 90 degrees to a fired employee. Anyone else might be overwhelmed. I just watched. Crocodile tears are more deceptive than teeth. I saw the apology. I said flatly, now the conditions. Richard sat back down. Seat. I didn't move. 70% shares is impossible. He shook his head. It's not about money. Vance Corp is my life's work. Giving you 70% is killing me. It's already dead. I'm the possibility of life. I know. He nodded. I'll give you 30%. You become executive director and CTO with veto power on tech. Plus, $300 million cash from me personally. Ethan, no company in the country can match this. You become a billionaire overnight. He threw out what he thought was an irresistible offer. Fame, money, power. He thought I'd made enough noise and would take the money and run. He still didn't know me. Mr. Vance, you seem confused. I laughed coldly. You aren't qualified to bargain. My conditions are a notification, not a negotiation. Richard's face finally darkened. Ethan, don't push too far. I've dropped all my dignity to beg you. Even a rabbit bites when cornered. Do you have to force me to the edge? You forced me there first. Looks like we can't agree. Richard's eyes turned sinister. He leaned back, like a coiled viper revealing fangs. He pulled a tablet from his bag, lit the screen, and turned it to me. I didn't want to do this. He said softly, you're smart, you hid well. But you forgot, you didn't pop out a stone. You have family. On the screen was a live feed of my parents' diner back in Ohio. My parents were busy serving customers. Everything looked normal, but at a corner table sat two rough-looking men. They weren't eating. They were just smoking, glancing at my elderly parents. My pupils constricted. My heart sank. My biggest fear had happened. This old dog had no bottom line. He knew my parents were my only weakness. They're distant relatives of mine. Short on cash. Went to your family's place for a meal. Richard's voice was light, but bone-chilling. But they have bad tempers. If they drink too much and cause a scene, or accidentally knock over a gas tank. That would be bad. Naked threats. He didn't need to send hitmen. Just having those two sit there paralyzed me. I stared at my parents' backs on the screen, clenching my fists until nails dug into flesh. Rage erupted in my chest. My calm calculation seemed laughable. I could destroy a billion-dollar empire, but I couldn't protect my parents in a small diner 1,000 miles away. Ethan, you're smart. Richard was satisfied with my reaction. He regained control. Your tech is priceless, but your parents' safety is priceless too. We each take a step back. 30% shares, 300 million. He repeated. Aegis returns. You be CTO, I stay chairman. Your parents stay safe, those relatives disappear. Good for everyone. He put the tablet away and sipped his tea. He won, or so he thought. I slowly raised my head. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and opened them. The rage was gone, replaced by a dead silence Richard had never seen. Not anger, not hate. Absolute stillness. Richard, I spoke softly. You think that's my weakness? I looked at him, corners of my mouth curving up weirdly. No, that is your death warrant. Richard froze. I took out my phone and dialed a number I saved 8 years ago and thought I'd never dial. It rang 3 times. A cool, professional female voice answered. Hello. Kate, it's me. Ethan. I need a favor. Someone is threatening Mom and Dad. Ethan, why are you using this number? What happened? My sister, Catherine Kate Cole, 8 years ago, she gave me this number for emergencies the police couldn't handle. She worked for the government. Her career was more important than my petty grievances. But Richard crossed the line. Kate, listen. My voice was flat. I'm safe, but someone is in the diner threatening them. 2 men. I described them. The man in charge is Richard Vance, chairman of Vance Corp. He's in front of me. Kate paused, processing. I got it. Her voice turned icy. Focus on your meeting. Within 30 minutes, Mom and Dad will be safe. Keep the line open. Put the phone in your pocket. Let it record. Understood. I slid the phone into my pocket. Richard sneered. Can't win, so you call family? Ethan, I overestimated you. You think calling a cousin or friend scares me. What does she do? Lawyer? Journalist? Useless here. He thought I was bluffing. I stayed silent. Why are you looking at me like that? He frowned. Last chance. Sign, take the money. We're your sister. What, a small-town DA? Can't save them. He dug up old files. He thought Kate was still a local prosecutor. I smiled. Richard, your problem isn't evil, it's ignorance. I said slowly. My sister, Kate. She was a prosecutor, but not in a small town. She is now a deputy inspector general at the Department of Justice. This month, she's leading a federal task force right here in this state. Deputy Inspector General. Those words froze Richard's smile. His hand shook. Hot tea spilled. He didn't feel it. His face went white. He knew what that title meant. True federal power. He had just sent thugs to threaten the parents of a high-ranking federal official. This wasn't a business dispute. It was a provocation of the federal government. He was putting his head in a guillotine. No. Impossible. He stammered. You're lying. Try calling your relatives. I shrugged. Richard collapsed into his chair. He fumbled for his phone, fingers trembling. He dialed. The line connected. But it wasn't his thug. It was a calm, authoritative voice. This is Agent Miller, FBI. You are Richard Vance? The 2 suspects threatening the owners are in custody. We are notifying you that you are implicated in conspiracy, racketeering, and threatening a federal officer's family. Stay where you are. Richard's phone slipped from his hand, screen cracking on the floor. He sat paralyzed. The light in his eyes died. The door burst open. Men in suits stormed in. FBI, Richard Vance, you're under arrest. Cold steel cuffs clicked on his wrists. Only then did Richard wake up. He looked at me with terror and regret. Ethan, save me. He screamed like a lunatic. I was wrong. Tell your sister to let me go. I'll give you everything. 70%. No, 80%. Anything. He begged like a dog. I ignored him. I picked up his tablet, deleted the video of my parents, and looked at him. Richard, I told you. You can't afford it. The agents dragged him out. I was alone with the cold tea. I put the phone in my ear. Kate. I heard. Her voice was steady. Thanks. Don't mention it. But this blew up. Richard has connections. People will try to bury this. I know. I nodded. So, I need to light another fire. What fire? A gift that shuts up anyone trying to save him. I hung up, opened my laptop, and changed the email timer to send now. I wasn't just ruining him. I was burning the whole web. Within 10 minutes, my phone vibrated like crazy. Breaking. Vance Corp chair Richard Vance arrested for massive fraud. Exclusive. Vance Corp offshore accounts exposed. Political earthquake. Anonymous leak implicates officials. The email was a depth charge. The evidence was too complete. Every dirty dollar, every bribe. The big shots trying to protect him were now scrambling to cut ties. Richard's tree had fallen. I sat in the tea room as the sky darkened. 5 p.m. A call from Jessica. Sobs. Ethan, please, let my uncle go. And Brad. What about them? Brad. Took him too. Co-conspirator. He just signed papers he didn't know. And my uncle. Money laundering. Ethan, we were wrong. Please, for old time's sake, call your sister. Old times. I laughed. That died when you stood on that stage. When you kicked my door. When your uncle threatened my parents. Jessica, some mistakes can't be fixed. You spend a life paying for them. I hung up and blocked her. Phone rang again. Kate, done. Mom and Dad have 24-hour protection. Richard cracked. He's talking. The evidence you sent was crucial. Good. But Vance Corp is finished. Bankrupt. Thousands of employees. Shame. I smiled. Kate, who said it's finished? I walked to the window. An old dynasty falls so a new one can rise. And I will be the king. Vance Corp collapsed faster than imagined. Banks seized assets. Partners fled. I moved to a penthouse in the tech district. I sent money to my parents, told them to retire. I planned my next step. Aegis was my child. I killed it to rebirth it. I needed a platform. My dark web post had bids up to $200 million. I ignored them. I was waiting for someone who wanted me, not just the code. One afternoon, an encrypted call came. Mr. Cole, a young, confident voice. I'm Lucas Thorne, CEO of Velocity Tech. Velocity, Vance Corp's biggest rival. Mr. Thorne, I'll be direct. Vance Corp is dead, but Aegis shouldn't be. I want you to rebuild it. Velocity offers funds, team, and a spin-off company. So you want to buy me? No, I want a partner. We buy the Vance Corp contracts. You lead Neo Aegis. Velocity takes 49%. You take 51% tech equity. You control it. A true visionary. He offered respect and control. I have a condition. I pick my team. The good one for Vance Corp. Done. One request. Launch in 3 months. 1 month. I said confidently. I'll give you a world 10 times stronger. 1 month later. Miracle. Neo Aegis launches, outperforms original. The return. Ethan Cole unveiled as CEO. I stood in the Neo Aegis office. Dave Miller was now CTO revitalized. We worked 20-hour days, but we won. Richard got life. Brad got 10 years. Jessica? I saw her once, handing out flyers outside a mall, looking worn and numb. I drove past. 1 year later, the Neo Aegis first anniversary gala. Top hotel. I gave a speech, then stepped onto the terrace. Sir, your champagne. A waitress spilled wine on my suit. She panicked. It's okay. She looked up. We froze. Jessica. She wore a cheap uniform. Terrified. Ethan. She dropped the tray. Please, let me go. I know I was wrong. I'll do anything. My family is ruined. She grabbed my leg, sobbing. People stared. I felt nothing. I pulled my leg away, wiped my pants with a handkerchief, and tossed in the trash. Handle it, I told the manager. I walked back to the light. She was just dust in my rearview mirror. Jessica was forgotten. Neo Aegis expanded. Year 2. We launched Origin AI. I spoke at Davos. At the mixer, a woman approached. Mr. Cole, I'm Elena Cross, partner at Starfall Capital. Your speech was optimistic, but flawed. She challenged my views on AI and social stratification. She was brilliant. We debated all night. Coffee tomorrow? I asked. Prepare to lose the debate, she smiled. We became partners, then lovers. She was my equal. I took her home to meet Kate and my parents. Kate approved. You found a treasure. Year 3. I proposed with a 3D printed ring designed by Origin. Will you explore the universe with me? Edo. 5 years later. A courtyard in San Francisco. My daughter, Lily, commanded a hologram. Origin, tell me a story. I watched, smiling. Elena leaned on my shoulder. She now ran our foundation. Your daughter is bossing around the world's top AI, Elena laughed. Privilege of the CEO's daughter. The world had changed. Origin was everywhere. I saw news. Brad Sterling released, arrested for robbery, back in jail. I felt nothing. What are you thinking? Elena asked. The next step, Project Voyager, interstellar travel. Is this the ultimate plan, eh? No, just a prologue. I held my family, looking at the stars. My protocol, be into the past. My true plan was the infinite future. Story complete.